Arsenal lead the Premier League. Aston Villa are flying. But injuries and pressure could tip this into a classic. So who comes out on top? Let's dig in. Welcome back to Laba Arsenal. Tomorrow there's going to be a very big test for us, for Mikel Arteta's men, as they play the very first fixture of the Premier League weekend with a game against Aston Villa. This is a team that is very strong. They're basically the most informed team in Europe right now. Welcome back to Laba Arsenal. And Arsenal's aspirations are going to be put to the test yet again. You know, the last time Arsenal went on an away ground, it was in Stamford Bridge. Yes, there was a red card to Moises Caicedo. Yes, Arsenal should have taken advantage of that red card, but the game was just somehow. However, there was little time to dwell on that as Brentford came to town and the Gunners did enough to get three valuable points against Keith Andrews' men to keep their 5 point gap ahead of Manchester City and, of course, the 7 point gap, a 6 point gap ahead of Chelsea. I think I'm going to check that again. So we go into this game against a side that is in very good form, and this is something that we have to be mindful of. So without further ado, let's take a quick look at Aston Villa's form and team news, look at Arsenal's form and team news, look at the potential predicted lineups, key tactical battles, and of course, our match predictions. So starting with the home side, Aston Villa, they are in blistering form. Unai Emery's side has won 6 matches in a row across all competitions. And it's just funny when you think about the fact that there was a time when Aston Villa were struggling in the campaign early in the season, that they had even gone, I think, 5 games in a row without scoring. However, the tables have turned. Since their 2-0 loss to Aston Villa after beating Man City, by the way, they beat Maccabi Tel Aviv 2-0 in the Europa League, beat Bournemouth 4-0 in the Premier League, visited Ellen Road and beat Leeds 2-1, played Young Boys in the Europa League and won 2-1, narrowly had a victory over struggling Wolves, and of course, defeating Brighton in the very last game by 3 goals to 4. That was a topsy-turvy game, very dramatic. There were goals for the Watkins, Amadou Onana, and of course, the informed forward on the Omayen. And these are players that Arsenal has been very mindful of. At home, Villa Park remains a challenge for any team that is visiting them in the Premier League this season. I don't think Unai Emery's men have lost any game at home. Let me quickly verify that. The only losses this season. Oh, yeah. They lost to Crystal Palace 3-0. I remember. That was a shock loss. Yeah. But every other game they've either drawn or won. And Arsenal has to be very mindful of the threats that they're going to pose in their home ground. Oli Watkins is coming back into form. He's one striker that has not really come up with the goods this season for Aston Villa. Although in the likes of Mayen and Ben Rogers, they have actually had some good games. So on the injury front, they're going to miss just Ross Barkley and Tyrone Mings. Mings had that terrible knee injury early in the campaign. But in the likes of Pau Torres and Ezri Konsa, they have a very good backup. Other than that, Aston Villa squad seems very confident. Momentum is certainly with them, and they are home. Yeah, when teams play at home in the Premier League, it's never easy. That's one ground that Arsenal has had their fair share of struggles. Even though our last 3 visits, I think we've all won. Last season, it was the one where Thomas Partey scored a very late goal. I think then the Trossard that sealed the victory. Like I remember that game we also had against them when Jorginho played the shot that hit Martinez at the back of his head before going into the goal. So Aston Villa is one team that can pose Arsenal threats, can pose Arsenal challenges if we ignore them in our own peril. But we have to play these games in front of us, and we have to win this type of games because now, if Arsenal wins against Aston Villa, They're going to be 8 points ahead of Man City. Even though Man City is playing Sunderland, and Sunderland are certainly no pushovers. They've drawn with Arsenal, they've drawn with Liverpool, and they've beaten Chelsea. But Man City, they're a different flavor when they're at home, but obviously they just see how that pans out. Even though teams like Tottenham and Bayer Leverkusen have gotten victories from them. But let's focus on why we're here, which is the Arsenal Aston Villa preview. So looking at Arsenal, we continue to be in very good form. We're on top of the league. When someone says Arsenal is on top of the league, you say which one? Because in the Champions League we're on top, in the Premier League we're also on top. And that's like the kind of form that we're showing right now. Our 2-0 win against Brentford was very, very welcome. It was a game that was on a nice edge. In all honesty, Brentford had their set pieces. Brentford had a couple of counter attacks, and there was that Kevin Shada header that hit the bar. Although the second viewing, it is an amazing save from David Raya, but we have to take all that. So Arsenal's unbeaten run is very, very far. We've not lost any game since the 31st of August when Dominic Soboslai played that amazing free kick that went past Raya. Our defense remained one of the best in the Premier League, only 7 goals conceded so far, which is amazing. But the Arsenal defense is currently tested with the terrible injuries that we'll be suffering. In the game against Brentford, Christian Mosquera, a young lad who was getting an extended run of games because of the injuries to Saliba and Gabriel, landed awkwardly from making a simple header. And from what I read, he's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. I don't know how true that is, but that's very devastating. We know for sure that Gabriel is not going to play any football for us this year. We also know that Saliba is struggling with a mystery injury that he has not told us about, and we really hope that he'll be available. However, Arsenal will have to make do with Julian Timber in the middle, while Benjamin White will continue to strut his stuff on the right. White was one of those players that came on against Brentford and showed what an amazing talent he was. Lovely assist for the Mikel Merino goal, and he had an all-action game. But these injuries continue to be a challenge for Arsenal, and I really hope that the lads can dig deep to get the result against Aston Villa. This is going to be a very, very tough game, in all honesty. But Arsenal has the depth to manage this, and that depth is certainly going to be tested. Looking at predicted lineups, I think Aston Villa will probably want to opt to have the same side that got that victory against Brighton. Bizot will continue in goal. I don't think former Arsenal goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez should be fit enough to play this game. Obviously, he's going to face a late fitness test, and Martinez, anytime he sees Arsenal, there's this level of, I don't know the word to use, morale that comes to him, and he makes also unbelievable saves. But in Bizot, it's a nice backup, decent. Obviously, he's considered 3 goals against Brighton, which you will not be happy with, but this thing is happening in football. The Polish Englishman Mati Cash will continue playing on the right. Cash has been a very good player for Aston Villa since breaking into the team, and has been consistent for them as well. He has a very decent threat in the attacking phase, and he has scored a couple of goals and created a couple of assists. On the left-hand side, they have the continuous battle between Ian Matson and Lucas Digne. But Matson had a very good game against Brighton. I think he also had an assist, if I recall. But Digne is also a very good player. Lovely left foot on him, good crosser of the ball, amazing free kick taker. So that would be a serious stretch against Arsenal. The centre back pairing remains consistent. Pau Torres and Ezri Konsa. We've played the most games together for Aston Villa under Emery because the likes of Tyrone Mings have always been injured. I think they have a youngster, is it Bogard? I've forgotten his name, that plays once in a while when there are like injury challenges and whatnot. But Konsa and Pau Torres are the ones that are expected to play in the middle, and I expect them to do that. In midfield, Aston Villa has 2 combative, tenacious midfielders in Boubacar Kamara and Amadou Onana. These are 2 lads that are very strong, very physical, always want to be very imposing on how they play, and Arsenal will need to be very mindful of that threat because these guys will not give Declan Rice and Matheus Mendy any breathing space. Further up the pitch, we have the ever-present Morgan Rogers, who currently cuts in from the left hand side. Although most times he actually switches with Captain John McGinn. In the new signing, if you're Gressa, will play on the right. Don Emmanuel plays on the right sometimes, but Gressa has been the one that been getting the nod in recent times. Only Watkins and Marlon have had a nice battle this season, and Marlon has started ahead of Watkins in some games. But with Watkins scoring 2 goals against Brighton, I think he would want to itch for a starting berth. I would expect Unai Emery to give him that chance. As for us now, the back line will still be shuffled a bit. David Raya will remain in goal. In as much as I love keeper Balaga, I think Raya is an amazing keeper that will continue to remain in goal, especially in the Premier League and the Champions League. Ben White will continue in right back. This is assuming that Saliba misses his fitness test and is not fit enough to play the game. If Saliba is not fit enough to play the game, then Jurien Timber will play alongside Piero Hincapié in the center of the midfield, of the defense, sorry. And Ben White will be on right back. I don't see Miles Lewis Kelly setting of Calafiori in a game of this magnitude. Lewis Kelly didn't have a good game the last time he started, which is against Bayern Munich. And, obviously he will want to be a contender for the game against Club Brugge in Belgium. But this Premier League game, I think we need Calafiori. He's very, very good defensively. And, we need him to be that defensive threat when the likes of Gressard and Rodgers are trying to cut him from the right, to get go ahead of him. In midfield, we expect to see the usual three. It's Mendy, our captain Martin Odegaard, and Declan Rice. Rice had the minor niggle in the previous game, but I think after the game, he told the folks at Sky Sports that he's okay, and I'm sure he's okay. Rice has an amazing engine on him. He's someone that hardly gets injured unless it's like a very serious injury. So I would expect Rice to still play. However, we have the right level of depth in that position. We can play Eze there, we can play Merino there, we can play Waneri. It depends on what the manager wants. Further up the pitch, I don't know if Trossard is going to be fit enough to resume this game. He got injured in the game against Bayern Munich. This was a calf strain. And obviously, he missed the Brentford game, missed the Chelsea game as well. So this game might come too soon for him. Maybe he might be targeting the Champions League game or our next Premier League clash. So I think Eberechi Eze will cut in from the left. Bukayo Saka, however present player that managed to get a very well-deserved rest against Brentford, came on from the bench and scored a goal. He will start in from the right. And I think Mikel Merino, based on the form he's showing, might start ahead of Victor Gyökeres. Gyökeres is still coming back to full fitness, and obviously he's our first choice striker, no doubt. But we need to manage this minute, so that he will not have any more setbacks. As we know, Kai Havertz had a setback when he was trying to come back from injury, and we have Gabriel Jesus thankfully on the bench. But Victor Gyökeres is someone that will need to get a couple of games to get into the hang of things. Maybe the Club Brugge game might be a good start. But then again, Merino has been doing very well. 2 goals and 3 assists in his last 4 games. Continues to show amazing form. I read somewhere, I think it was Asblog, that in 2025, Merino has scored 21 goals for club and country. That's amazing. I remember that he started playing as a striker for the very first time in February 2025 when we played against Leicester City in the Premier League. So to see how he has transformed his game, to see how he has adapted just for the good of the team is very commendable. As for key tactical battles, I would expect to see Arsenal's makeshift defense lock horns against Villa's attacking momentum. Oli Watkins will be jumping on the beats. He just scored 2 goals against Brighton, and I think he will want to continue to do more, which is quite interesting. But Hincapié and Timber, that is Saliba is not fit, we have to be very, very, very concentrated because this is going to be a challenge. If they have that loose ability to let Watkins go, he can punish anyone. At least, if not anything, last season, Watkins scored a goal against us at the Emirates, and even the season before that, when we were challenging for the Premier League title of Man City, Watkins scored that one chance, that made him keep the ball while Petro was escorting him and stuff like that. So we need to be very mindful of the pace that Watkins has, and hopefully we can do well there. Of course, there'll be a serious battle in midfield. I've spoken about this earlier. Arsenal midfield controllers in the forms of Declan Rice and Martin Zubimendi, they are going to lock horns with the physical power of Onana and Kamara. So Arsenal need to dominate possession. Arsenal need to control tempo and do their absolute best to limit Villa's transition plays. Villa has a very strong midfield engine, and they'll be doing everything they can to disrupt Arsenal's flow. One way that I've seen in recent times is that some teams tend to disrupt the flow, too many start stops anytime they play against us. Kind of worked a bit for Chelsea, in all honesty. And that might just be a kryptonite that's just there out there for us. Obviously, Arsenal is mindful of the wide attacks and counter-attacking threat that Villa will pose. They love to hit on the break. That's one of their strong points. So we need the likes of Saka and Eze on the wings to track back and stay sharp when our wingers stay isolated, just to avoid any dangers in the break. Of course, set pieces, Arsenal will need to, up their set piece game because Aston Villa has quite, a very good organization. But on the defensive side as well, Arsenal has to defend set pieces and crosses cleanly because if you remember, we conceded a goal to a set piece from Chelsea when Rhys James flicked the ball. Julian Timber didn't mark Chaluba well, and Mosquera was busy hugging Enzo. So I'm sure Nicolas Jovet would have put them through their drills, and I'm sure Arsenal will know how to do what is required to score. Speaking of scoring, Arsenal has to be very clinical with their chances. Like this kind of game, we need efficiency up front. This is not the type of game that you want to waste the chances you are afforded because of the fact that if you do that, you'll be duly punished. And that's something like a team that hits on the break, and once in a while you have very good strikers and forwards that can punish you if you're not up to speed. So finally, to match predictions, I think Arsenal has enough in the tank to get a victory, like a narrow 1-0 or 2-0 victory, just something akin to what we did last season. It was Partey and Trossard that scored very late goals for us. I think that was the second game of the season or so, if I recall clearly. Yes, after we had played. I can't remember who we played first. I know they were the second game of the season. Yeah, then of course we now played Man City. I know we played Tottenham after them and also won the Gabriel header. So Arsenal should have enough to get this done. This is a team that have very experienced professionals, are also in high confidence, of in a very good run of results. We have not lost since October 30, since August 31st. And this last we want to keep that record intact. So that's basically what the match preview for the Aston Villa game. So it's going to be by 1:30 p.m. Let's not forget that tomorrow, the lunchtime kickoff. And once we win Aston Villa, I'm just going to enjoy the rest of the game with, just chilling, seeing how that results pan out. I'm going to do a match reaction stream after that game, just for us to sit down and recap what we did. And of course, on Sunday, we'll have the game week review show where our panelists will come and we'll talk about all the games that were played in the Premier League in the game week 14. So that's pretty much a wrap for me. Looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow in the match reaction stream. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. We're 3,000 subscribers right now and we're still rising. And thanks for everyone that's been part of this journey with me. Till then, come on, you gunners.